region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Transition from becoming a listener to a listener supporter. Call 353-9528 or go to WJCT.org and pledge. Thanks.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schendler. On today's First Coast Connect, a Jacksonville charity helped train the only neurosurgeon in Sierra Leone. We talked to the local founder of the nonprofit about saving lives here and abroad. Then, changing the narrative of the city begins with changing who tells the story. We preview Front Porch History, mapping undiscovered stories of Black Jacksonville at the Ritz Theatre and LaVilla Museum. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or tag us on social media. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. President Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have signed an agreement to move toward expanding cooperation between the two countries on technology and nuclear energy. NPR's Danielle Kurtzleben reports Trump is on the second day of his state visit to the UK and arrived at Starmer's country home today.
Trump was greeted at Checkers by Starmer and his wife, Lady Starmer. Multiple American CEOs have come along for the trip. U.S. tech companies, including Google and Microsoft, have said they plan billions of dollars in investments in the UK. Other key issues the two leaders are expected to speak about include the tariffs Trump has imposed on UK goods, as well as the conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine. Danielle Kurtzleben, NPR News, Checkers.
The U.S. is trying to revive Gaza ceasefire talks. This follows Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar, a key mediator in previous talks. NPR's Daniel Estrin has more from Tel Aviv.
Hamas leaders were in Qatar discussing President Trump's ceasefire proposal when Israeli warplanes targeted them. No senior Hamas leaders appear to have been killed, but the strike enraged Qatar, which said it was reassessing its mediation role as a consequence. Now, the U.S. is looking for a way to revive Gaza ceasefire talks and is seeking an Israeli gesture to bring the Qataris back to the negotiating table. That's according to a person briefed on the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss the sensitive issue. Since ceasefire talks collapsed, Israel has launched a major ground offensive in Gaza City. Families of hostages in Gaza are now camped outside the Israeli Prime Minister's house, protesting that move. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
Turning Point USA continues its American Comeback Tour today at Colorado State University in Fort Collins. It's the tour's first event held following the killing of its CEO and founder, conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Colorado Public Radio's Tony Gorman reports.
There will be a visual for Kirk at Canvas Stadium in place of events that were previously scheduled. Some CSU students, like Nick Nye, say they remain concerned with security after the conservative activist was gunned down on the campus of Utah Valley University last week.
I think it is an eye-opener, and it shows a lot of potential for scary things to happen. So yeah, I think it is concerning, but I also don't feel like there's much chance that it gets better for security.
The university officials said some student groups and external organizations had planned unrelated memorials, but they were asked to move their activities to the stadium. For NPR News, I'm Tony Gorman in Denver.
D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is expected on Capitol Hill next hour. The House Oversight Committee is holding a hearing over the federal government's oversight of the district. You're listening to NPR News in Washington.
Good morning. You're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. I'm Stephen Ponson. It is now 9:04. Florida's Chief Financial Officer Blaise Ngoli is accusing Jacksonville leaders of overspending by $200 million. He also suggested the county millage rate should be lowered significantly. During a press conference yesterday, Ngoliah did not provide specific programs that his Doge team is characterizing as overspending, but he criticized the growth the city has had over the last 5 budget years relative to its population increase. This press conference comes as the City Council is set to meet this Tuesday to pass the final budget and property tax rate for the next fiscal year. After the press conference, 2 council members said pulling $200 million out of the budget at this point won't be feasible. In response to the state CFO, Mayor Donna Deegan touted the city's increased funding for first responders and road improvements and said the city has the lowest property tax rate of any major city in the state. Speaking of the budget, Mayor Donna Deegan is hosting the penultimate budget town hall at 6 tonight at Fort Caroline Middle School on University Club Boulevard in Arlington. The final town hall is set for Monday evening, September 22nd at the Northside Church of Christ on Avenue B in the Grand Park community. The new budget will take effect on October 1st. It should be a beautiful day of weather here for Northeast Florida. Will remain mostly dry, but we do have the chance for a few scattered showers in Putnam and Flagler counties. It'll be warm as well, with highs reaching the upper 80s to lower 90s inland, mid 80s out at the beaches.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Lodestar Foundation, inspired by the principle that helping someone else less fortunate is a path to a happier, healthier, and more meaningful life. Learn more at lodestarfoundation.org.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, making the improbable reality. It's become something of a skill set for one local neurosurgeon. After transforming his own life through medical training, he is now aiming to do the same around the globe. Later in the program, shaping the history of Black Jacksonville through the stories of family, friends, and elders. But first, a Mexican immigrant with a remarkable backstory created a global nonprofit focused on fostering an equally likely transformation. Here to tell us about it is Dr. Alfredo Quinones-Hinojosa, chair of the Department of Neurologic Surgery at Mayo Clinic Jacksonville and co-founder and president of Mission Brain. Good morning, Dr. Q.
Good morning, my dear Anne. I'm so excited to be here with you. Thank you.
It's so nice to have you back. So, since we last spoke, the nonprofit that you founded almost 15 years ago, Mission Brain, which stands for Bridging Resources and Advancing International Neurosurgery. So this is a organization that aims to basically make brain surgery possible in places where it typically has not been.
Well, I tell you, it began almost 20 years ago. I was just on my way here thinking about the history. In 2006, I went for the first time, and it was a simple act of going back to Mexico and doing something in a hospital with friends that I knew there. And 5 years later, we ended up bringing a very large team of surgeons, nurses, medical students, as well as technical expertise. And from there, a 501c3 was born. And so many lives have changed since then. I never imagined that we would be here where we are today.
Yeah. And so the aim is not modest at all. It really is ambitious. It relies on a global network of participants, of philanthropists, and professionals, medical professionals. And recently, your organization has gotten national attention, international attention, including coverage by NPR. Because of this extraordinary story of what happened in Sierra Leone. Can you tell us about that, the progress there and just kind of the recent breakthrough?
Thank you for asking that question. You are absolutely right. Our goals are global. We are ambitious. We are dreamers. But I do believe that if you dream high, if you put your 100 billion neurons, your 600 trillion synapses in each of our brains, we can make these dreams reality. So it began because a resident, Fatu, who is in the story in NPR, saw the need in her own country, in Sierra Leone, to have at least one neurosurgery because of her own family experience of lack of access to care, neurosurgical care. She came back, got in touch with us, got in touch with some leaders in the United States, including our foundation, Mission Brain. We realized that not only there's a lot of need in poor countries, but there are actually 33 countries in the world and without a single neurosurgeon. Sierra Leone, the story in NPR that was featured, it's a country with 8 million people and 0 neurosurgeons up until last year. Just imagine that here in Jacksonville, where we are, we have about 2 million people and we have over 40 neurosurgeons. So there are parts in the world that need a year in the world. We estimate that we have 5 million people, 5 million patients that need either brain or spine neurosurgical care. We estimate that we have a need of about 23,000 brain surgeons that are needed in the world to be able to provide that care. But it's not just the neurosurgeon. It's the fact that many of these places just don't have the resources, don't have the hospitals, don't have the people, don't have the equipment. Our goal is very, very ambitious. But I think that one step at a time, just like what we did in Sierra Leone, we can make those dreams a reality.
So the doctor that you talk about, Fatou Kante, she was a neurosurgery resident in California, and she had lived in Sierra Leone. She fled the civil war there, but she went back to visit. And this experience that she had with her own grandmother who had a stroke was that she was desperately trying to find someone to care for her. She needed a neurosurgeon. There was not one. And as a result, her grandmother was paralyzed and remains in a wheelchair because of that. And that was what inspired her to say, we really have to find a solution for my home country. And that was what prompted her to get in touch. So this doctor that was ultimately on the shoulders of Mission Brain, able to become a neurosurgeon, to become trained, and also to get the equipment. Tell us a little bit about, is it Dr. Elu Kamara?
Dr. Kamara, just think about this same deal. The story of his life, how he realizes that he wants to pursue medicine, and the only care that he potentially could give at the time was very limited. So he left, got a scholarship to go and study in another country, and then he was able to study and become an orthopedic surgeon. Went back and he saw that so many of his patients were dying of brain and spinal cord injury. And he says, I'm an orthopedic surgeon. I have surgical principles, but I do need to train in neurosurgery. And that's where we connected, also through Fatou. And we ended up realizing that if we can provide the resources for him to go and train in another country, in this case, Morocco, where we had connections, and we can subsidize it, we can help with financial resources. Maybe over the course of 6 months, a year, 2 years, he can get the appropriate training to go back to Sierra Leone and potentially save lives. And that's exactly what the journey that led him to now be where he is, saving so many lives and touching so many more.
And it is a complicated network that, that is required to get somebody that training. As you say, he's going to a different country, he's getting the training, but he also needs a stipend to live. There's all of these things. And then once he's back in his home country, he needs equipment. He needs the proper gear to do the surgery. And all of that is something that Mission Brain works to provide. The story that was recently featured was this surgery that he did on a 56-year-old father of 3 who'd been paralyzed for years. His name was Maury Abibu, and he was basically immobilized because of this mass that had formed at the base of his skull, and it required a very careful and long surgery.
So just think about Mr. Abibu. Just like him, there are many, 5 million other people that are suffering from diseases of the brain and the spine. And yes, he was dying of a very slow death. He was basically suffocating. He was almost like drowning little by little. You can take less of a breath every day, every week, every month. And it was very, very excruciatingly painful for us to see this because we knew about the patient. And luckily to the collaborative efforts also through 2 neurosurgeons from Stanford that were able to travel with April, who's the CEO of the foundation that we formed, which incidentally, April was a nurse who trained me when I was a resident at UCSF. There's a personal connection right there. April ended up traveling to Sierra Leone. We realized we can help. Not only we have the need for a CT scan. We need images. We need the surgeon. We got the surgeon already. Can we put it all together? Can we stitch different resources? And that's how this beautiful surgery that you see how this team saved the life of Mr. Abibu. And at the end, 6 hours later, you can see him after he had been immobilized, unable to move his legs for more than 6 months. 6 hours after the surgery, you see him wiggling his toes. And you see his wife going down on her knees, praying, thanking God for such a beautiful miracle. And it just brings tears to your eyes, and it makes you want to do more and more.
The surgery was successful and it happened because of this remarkable training and opportunity. But the surgery itself shows just how difficult the challenge is and remains, because during the surgery, the electricity goes out in the surgical twice. And it's a storm season there. And so the surgery is happening literally with headlamps. They're, performing this delicate, unbelievably precise surgery on the brain without the lights.
Can you imagine that? It was Dr. Sengu and Dr. Vaca who were some of my colleagues. Dr. Sengu was actually a resident at UCSF where I trained. So we're all connected. We are a small group of people in the world that are able and willing to do these kind of things. And they just have the small little lights on their head, which I was providing the light to do this delicate surgery in which you can touch something. The best way that I can describe this type of surgery is almost like disconnecting a grenade or a bomb, and you have to disconnect the wires. And if you disconnect the wrong wire, you can give the patient a stroke, or suddenly the patient can stop breathing, or their heart can stop literally in the middle of surgery. So these are very delicate, and it was amazing. The light came back on. They continued the surgery. The light went out again. It was really a tremendously, innovative surgery, but it was the spirit of the people that made this happen, and also the patients, the families. And it just really inspires you. It makes you realize that it's small things that we can do to make these dreams possibilities around the world.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Alfredo Quinones-Hinojosa about training neurosurgeons around the world. You can join our conversation by calling 904-549-2937 or emailing firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. One thing that has been remarkable about the work of this organization is that you're able to do it not on the cheap, but through very little staffing and, really prioritizing using the funds raised for the people that are in need or the doctors that are in need of training.
So in essence, we have over 2,000 volunteers around the world right now. We are in 29 countries. Last year alone, we touched 23,000 lives in 2024. This year, in 2025, we have touched already that many, half the year. And we have one employee, and that's April. That's it.
Like one paid employee?
One paid employee. That's it for the entire, but we have a network of volunteers, of patients around the world, of people that have the means to be able to contribute, of doctors, of nurses, of engineers, of business people around the world that they know they want to help, they just don't know how. So we provide the pathway, we make the connections, we engage hospitals that have the resources, because there are places, there are poor countries that have hospitals that have potentially the equipment, but they also have lack of access for the poor, for the marginalized. So our goal as a foundation is to build those bridges. And as you know, I've been blessed in my life that I care for patients from all over the world, both at Hopkins and now here at the Mayo Clinic, that have the economic power to be able to open some of those very expensive hospitals in marginalized countries where we can bring poor patients and do those surgeries at no cost for the patients, and of course no charge from us, from the surgeons. But I always tell people our secret is that we don't go and do, we go and partner with the local surgeons, the local people, and we give them the sort of connection and the dream that they can find solutions to their problems. We go there to learn from them, and if given an opportunity to help and share our knowledge. And I think that's something that makes our foundation so powerful.
Dr. Q, people know you in a lot of ways, including, you were featured in a Netflix documentary. You've been the subject of multiple books. And so to some extent, your story is out there, but I do think it's worth reminding people a little bit about the broad outlines of it, at least, because Yours is an immigrant story, and you came to this country as a migrant worker, essentially from Mexico. You entered without documentation. You entered without the ability to speak English, um, and you had very few options at that in those first years.
Thank you. And it's very easy for people to focus on my story. And I say thank you for bringing that up. I've been so blessed. And yes, the Netflix documentary, The Surgeon Cut, Lucy Blackstead and James Vanderpool, the directors, did an amazing job telling our story, plus three other surgeons, by the way. And that, of course, was recognized with an Emmy and a BAFTA. I'm very blessed that I was part of that. But my story is like the story of many immigrants. That's how this country, this beautiful country, the United States, was built on the backs of ordinary people who have done extraordinary things to get us to where we are today as a beautiful country. And I think I've been blessed, and I felt, what if I was to bring a little bit of my joy? I do remember as a young little boy seeing Americans coming into my small little agricultural communities to help us build the trains. And I saw how much they care for us and how much love they gave us. And I said, what if one day I'm given the opportunity to do the same for the other people around the world? And that's how Mission Brain is born in 2006 after I finished my residency at UCSF, and I was already a Hopkins faculty. So yes, I am blessed, I am lucky, but the story is no longer about me. I'm just a person. I'm just a member of Mission Brain. Mission Brain is much bigger than any of us. I think Mission Brain is a movement in which people, young people, senior people, believe that we can change the world, that we can make the world a better place. And we're doing it through access to complex brain and spine surgery.
Do you wish that people were more aware these days of the kinds of um, positive stories about immigrants who are coming to this country with very little?
I think so. Of course, I do love the stories of rags to riches, and we have many. I know at Mayo, I am surrounded by surgeons and doctors and nurses that have their own beautiful, inspiring stories, and I call them the unsung heroes. I wish my story was not so, that was not worthy of telling the story in Netflix. I wish there were 1,000, a million series about immigrants, because that's really the people who build this country, who continue to provide extraordinary, support and inspiration for us to keep going.
Yeah. So, in addition to the Mission Brain work, you also work on trying to resolve brain cancers and trying to basically cure what is a disabling and sometimes deadly illness for people. How is progress coming on that front? I mean, that is a very real challenge.
It's amazing. You just reminded me, just a few months ago, we opened the first proton carbon center in the world that uses technology in which you can give a patient proton, and 9 seconds later you can give the patient carbon. And I'm so excited about that because it opens a future in which we're going to be able to treat many, many cancers, hopefully with better technology. Now you ask, how do I link that to Mission Brain? My goal as a Dean of Research now here at the Mayo Clinic, as a principal investigator of a laboratory that has been funded by the federal government for over 20 years, is that I want to make our therapists accessible to the world. And the more innovation, the more intellectual property that we put, the more technologies that we license to industry, the more we'll drive the prices down of our technologies, and the more it will be accessible to the rest of the world. So you ask, Mission Brain over the last 4 years has done a hackathon. This is where we hack the brightest minds from around the world through the Harvard MIT chapter that we have.
This is the hackathon?
This is the hackathon. This is where we put people from all over the world, and we ask them, how do you solve a problem? Let's say a patient is in rural Peru in the Inca mountains, and they need to come to Lima for a surgery. It's not easy. How do you provide the transportation? Now they have to pay for rent. They have to pay for transportation. Now they have to go to the hospital. What technology, what resources? Do you need a bipolar? Do you need a microscope? You need this resource. You need screws to be able to fuse their spine. We ask our youth, help us come up with ideas that we can then put intellectual property, that we can then spin off companies, universal, access to healthcare, to this type of surgery is, I think, something that I aspire that we will one day have.
What concerns do you have right now in terms of funding? We know that that has been an issue at a lot of research institutions and a lot of, you know, schools as well.
Well, I tend to be a very positive person in general. I know that the NIH, there's been all kinds of in the news because of some of the cuts that were made. But I believe that the United States, our government, our people, they still believe in innovation and research. And you probably saw over the last couple of weeks, more positive news have come out of our budget for the NIH, for our research, for NSF, for NASA, for Department of Defense. So I believe that maybe what is going to happen is some of the expenses that we have had in research, specifically what is called the indirects. These are the monies that sometimes come to institutions to help pay for the light, for the building, for things like that. I think they may be reduced over time, but this is where we need to be creative. We as institutions, we as scientists, how can we do more with less? And I got to tell you, that's something that I'm also learning through these hackathons that we're doing globally, because we're putting people that are in marginalized areas with very little resources with those who have a lot more, and they're trying to find solutions that can be applicable to both. We're learning from that, and that is the future that I see us.
Well, it's amazing work that you're doing. Congratulations on the coverage that it's been getting. Congratulations on the success that you've had in Sierra Leone and elsewhere. It's great to see you again, Dr. Q.
Thank you. And congratulations to our team, the 2,000 volunteers around the world. They are the unsung heroes. Thank you for having me here to be a voice for all of them, but they deserve all the credit.
Sure. Thank you. Up next, an oral storytelling project that begins on the front porch. Welcome back. Well, it's a research project and an artistic undertaking, one that's both political and personal. Here to tell us about Front Porch History mapping undiscovered stories of Black Jacksonville is Kelsi Hasden, founder of Rooted. Good morning, Kelsi.
Good morning.
We're also joined by Vic Alexander, artist and storyteller with Elevated Media. Vic, good morning.
Good morning.
We're welcome back to Dana Maule. She's the executive director of Northside Pride and the director of the Moncrief Springs film. Dana, welcome back.
Hey, Ann.
And we're delighted to have Coach Al Austin, former Ribault High girls basketball coach and FHSAA Hall of Fame member inductee. Coach Austin, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
I appreciate that you're sporting the Rattlers hat this morning. Kelsi, this project is called Front Porch History, and you've said that your goal here is to kind of release these stories that may be either held within the confines of family or stuck behind a paywall. Explain to us kind of what stories you're hoping to liberate here.
I'm really hoping that we can capture some of the ordinary stories that people have been hearing growing up, right? You don't think anything about granny, granddaddy, doing the work that they had to do so that everybody could be fed. And, you just kind of live in your life. But what we're finding is how all of those simple tasks got us all here to be where we're at today. And these are all oral histories, right? These are not published anywhere. Anything that is that is published about this is like we said, like behind a paywall, or it's locked in academia, and it's not accessible to the average person. So we want to bring these stories back around and say, like, this wasn't just your family. This is everybody's family. This is all y'all. This is all of us, right? And let everybody know, like, you're important.
Yeah.
We're important.
And I think you said that this story, for your own, motivation, had a bit of a personal element as well, because
Yeah.
your own grandma was going through something that was preventing her from being able to share the stories that she used to.
Yeah, my granny has dementia, and I can't ask her the questions that we're asking in some of these interviews. And that really hit me a couple years ago when she no longer remembered my oldest daughter, Emma, who is named after her. And it was like, oh man, right? Like, now that I'm at the age to really appreciate all those stories she had been telling me my whole life, now, okay, so I gotta find out how other ways to get these stories. So while I am talking to aunts and uncles and recording people now, it really is a bit of a gut punch that I can't get them from Granny, but it's also an amazing drive to collect these for the rest of the community.
Dana, I know that one of the themes that this project has carried is the idea that Black history is oral history, and that getting these stories out to the public really requires some work to make sure that those stories aren't lost, because they're not just necessarily a story of what happened within a family, but they're the story of a community. They're the story of, this city in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, I've been inviting people to the exhibit, which is on Sunday, and I said, this is not just Black history, this is your history. So whether you're Black, white, brown, or anything in between, these stories are going to find you, and they're going to resonate with you in a very meaningful way. And to Kelsi's point, we started realizing that particularly in the Black community, our history is deteriorating because our elders are passing on. And I kind of crossed paths with Coach Austin going to funerals. We were at a funeral together for Coach Hare. Coach Hare is a former Negro Leagues player from Jacksonville, and he passed, I think it was in the spring. And I think that was what lit the fuse for me, and I think Kelsi will agree. We don't want to lose any more of our stories. We don't want to lose any more of our traditions. We have to start documenting, what happened to Black folks in Jacksonville, the successes, the struggles. And because we rely on such much of an oral tradition in the Black community, we knew that we needed to document it, put it in paper, put it on blogs, put it on social media so that people can have access to it, and that we can really preserve those stories.
And it's not just that these are stories that sometimes are rooted in personal experience, but the story of, Black history has very often been marginalized or not included in the official history of places. And so the stories that you're getting at might be familiar to people within a certain circle and completely unfamiliar to people in the larger community or in a more formal way.
Absolutely. We're sitting next to the winningest coach in girls basketball across the state of Florida, Coach Al Austin. And while a lot of people may know him because of his time at Ribault, he holds a record at FAMU. He's in the FAMU Hall of Fame for his track career, and I'll let him speak to it himself. But beyond our personal narratives, there is historical and cultural significance in the story of every person we interview, like Coach Al Austin.
Yeah, and Coach, I mean, we should say you, in addition to being the winningest basketball coach, you were an athlete yourself. You set the record, the state record for the 100-yard dash back in the day, 9.6 seconds, I believe, in 1957. So you are no slouch as an athlete. Talk about what it means to be selected as one of the 9 individuals for this initial project to focus on.
Well, it's very important to me because I have such a story to tell. And track and field in Duval County during the day was an experience that when you look back on it, you just wonder how we got through it in terms of facilities and all of that. when I ran track at New Stanton Senior High School, we didn't even have a 440 track to practice on. So our first time seeing a 440 track would be at a state track meet at FAMU in Tallahassee. And so we had tracks in some of the local schools, but we were not allowed to use them. So it was quite an experience.
What does your experience coaching, how has that just shaped the life that you've led? I mean, you were at Ribault for decades, and I think from 78 to 2003, roughly?
36 years.
36 years.
Yeah.
And we should say, so you're the winningest coach in Florida high school history. You had a career record of 695 wins and just 56 losses, which is really unbelievable. 5 consecutive state championships, which has never been done. So how has that record and just your success on the basketball court shaped, the life that you've led here in Jacksonville?
Well, I'm probably the winningest coach in Duval County now. In the state of Florida, it's a little different. Some of the records lost, but we won 721 games and only lost 60 games in 26 years. We didn't lose 10 games at home in 26 years. So our winning percentage is the greatest probably in the nation because we only lost 60 games in 26 years, won 721. But we do hold records in terms of consecutive wins, 101, and also 97, 2 different times that we have those consecutive games winning streaks. So it has been an experience. When we first started coaching track, and I must give some of the assistant coaches, they were the backbone of our program. But when we first started, girls were walking the ball down the court. They were not in a hurry. They were no pressing and none of that kind of defense. So what we started to do, because I worked as an assistant coach, junior varsity coach under Jerome Wheeler, which was my friend. We lived across the court from each other in the Blodgett home. And coaching basketball at that time, girls, like I said, were walking the ball down the court. So we brought a press on. We started pressing, and they were not used to that. So that kind of got us over the hump in terms of winning.
What kind of coach were you? I mean, you seem like such a even-tempered gentleman. Were you a tough coach? Were you a demanding coach? Were you a kind coach?
Depending on the situation. Now, if they
Ask
didn't
the
perform,
players.
yeah, if they didn't perform the first half like they should have at halftime, I probably close a few doors kind of hard. And I don't want to use the word slam the doors, but a little hard. But could be tough sometimes, especially if they went out and they were taking the game lightly when, it's a serious situation and we need to make preparations for the second half. That's where games are won or lost. So it could be tough at times.
How did you inspire your players?
I think just because of the tradition and this background, the school, and we had a philosophy we were the Lady Pressing Trojans, so we did a lot of pressing, and that was our tradition. That was our trademark.
They had a lot to live up to, I would imagine, once you sort of set the pace, right?
Oh, most definitely. They call us. We would run the scores up sometimes. It wasn't intentional, but we were just so used to pressing all the time until it was hard to get them out of that mentality.
Yeah.
I can second that because I played basketball, and I'm embarrassed to say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. I played for Paxton School for the Advanced Studies, and when we came against the Lady Trojans, we just knew we would meet defeat. I just have to be honest. We knew, they had a reputation, and they still do. Yeah. But, everything that we've learned about Coach, this type of achievement for a predominantly Black school, for girls basketball, it is unmatched. And so, again, documenting his personal narrative, hearing it from his own voice, what it was like playing with, some women who went on to have amazing college careers. In his early career, the WNBA wasn't a thing, but some of these women that he coached had that kind of talent. And I'm thinking of Carlisa Thomas. I'm thinking of Kim Gallen. I'm thinking of a number of greats in girls basketball from Duval County, from John Ribault High School that he mentored and coached. And it's so important that we own that story in Jacksonville and that we own that for a school like Ribault.
Vic, obviously, the artwork that you've produced for this show is a big part of telling the story. And I'm curious how you approach for instance, somebody like Coach, is it intimidating just knowing kind of, their accomplishments? How do you interact with them? How do you get a sense of them for the portraiture that you're doing?
It really started off with the interviews themselves by being the director and just one of the cinematographers on board as we were filming these interviews. It was really important to me to naturally study the people. It's what I do. I do a lot of portrait work and I draw caricatures and illustrations. So as I'm sitting there studying someone like Coach Al Austin, it was just kind of intuitive. I sat there and it wasn't so much as intimidating. It was really just, it was my truth. I got to see the person. I got to connect and hear his voice and the stories of these people. And it genuinely just drawed me to be able to then paint them on my off time and just feel like it was a moment where I could reflect on the interviews that I had just witnessed.
And so this process, Vic, these are being filmed, the interviews are happening, and you're kind of there just watching and witnessing while these are happening?
So my role was I'm a part of an elevated media team. So for us, it was documenting, so helping with the camera setup, the composition, the audio. And my main role was kind of being the liaison between, for the Black Jacksonville team and my elevated media team. So it was a way for us to, yes, document in order to help Black Jacksonville as a collective, but also because I'm an artist, I was just intuitively standing behind the scenes thinking about how I could paint these people. So I was kind of playing like double hats.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was very integral to how the project manifested, what the end results would be, because we knew that these would be stories people are hearing for the first time. Maybe they knew of the person but didn't know what they did, or maybe they heard of a particular event that we were discussing but didn't know who was behind that event. And so we needed a visual artist to illustrate the concept. And a lot of people know about Axe Handle Saturday. They just celebrated the milestone year, 60 years in August. And some people don't know what Rutledge Pearson looks like. And so Vic did a 30 by 30 canvas of Rutledge Pearson. We also interviewed Otis Williams, who was a player for the Indianapolis Clowns in the Negro Leagues. A lot of people don't know what Otis Williams looks like. You can't even Google him. Mm-hmm. So Vic provided context through visual art and paintings, and I think he did some watercolors as well, so that people can have an image in their minds, in addition to the research and the historical information that Kelsi and I provided.
Yeah, and so Kelsi, there's 9 people selected in this initial set of profiles and artwork that you did. How were those people chosen? I mean, Coach is known to many in this community. There's, you interviewed Sandra Marine, who's she's been on this program. She's, heads up the Gullah Geechee Corridor initiatives. And so some people are known, but others, there's 3, for instance, names that are Pearson that are not familiar to me. Rutledge Pearson, of course, was involved in the youth movement and was a participant in the Axe Handle Saturday event protest.
The organizer. Yeah, he was the president of the NAACP at that time, and he organized those students who demonstrated at the counters for Axe Handle Saturday.
But you have on your list Patricia Pearson, Rutledge Jr., and Roderick Pearson as 3 people.
Children. Yeah.
And so how did you come upon them as people that you wanted to be part of this project?
I mean, that was really Dana. She's got a Rolodex. She knows everybody. And
what stories did they have to share? I mean, when you're talking to them, are they talking primarily about Dad and the work that he did? What are they telling you?
Yeah,
so that's part of our process, right? So I have all the research, right? I've been doing research on Jacksonville's Black neighborhoods for a couple years now, and so I'm pretty familiar with events, places, the history of those spaces. And so what we do is try to Google some of these people, right? Try to do some research on these individuals so that we can approach them and not have to say, Coach Al, where were you born, right? Like, here's basic information. We're able to just start the interview with real depth. And so approaching the 3 Pearsons was an incredible opportunity. They've never been interviewed together before.
Right.
They've
That
done
was-
interviews.
That was monumental because we
Yeah.
didn't know that approaching them. And I'm going to interject real quick,
Mhm.
Kelsi. So I knew Rutledge Sr.'s brother, Lloyd Pearson, and my grandfather introduced me to him. And through getting to know the family, I shared this project with them, and I said, "Can we interview y'all a little bit more? We want to do more research." And so we got the siblings together, the sons and daughters of Rutledge Sr. And one story that was unique that they gave us was, why did your dad get involved in the civil rights movement? Why was the NAACP his claim to fame? And they said because he was banned from playing professional baseball because of the color of his skin. And a lot of people haven't been able to connect the dots that Rutledge Sr. was a professional baseball player. He went to college on a scholarship to play baseball. He was a baseball coach at Stanton. And when he wanted to go pro, he was signed with the Jacksonville Seabirds, but they would not let him play on the field. And a lot of hate mail, death threats, and they released him from the team. From that experience, he joined the NAACP.
Wow.
And his kids gave us that account from their mouths on their own.
Coach.
Actually, Rutledge Pearson was my teacher at middle school at Isaiah Blocker. And he used to walk down the railroad track from Isaiah Blocker to New Stanton Senior High School to coach the baseball team. Fantastic person, fantastic teacher. Matter of fact, he and his brother was teaching at Isaiah Blocker during the time. And of course, Rod Pearson was a girls basketball coach with AAU. So we had some good experiences with the Pearsons.
A lot of cross connections. Yeah. One of the people that you profile in this story has, like a lot of them, has larger resonance in terms of the overall history of not just Jacksonville, but education, desegregation. And that person's Anita Gardner. Tell us about her and just also kind of the stage of life that she's at and the opportunity to capture some of her story.
Oh man, she was the first.
She was our first one.
Our first person that we interviewed. And so Miss Garner is 98 years old. And she was the first Black female principal at a predominantly white school in Jacksonville in 1970. So, right, some of the research that we had done, right, we know, right, like Axe Handle Saturday happened in 64. 64 was a huge year here in Jacksonville for race riots and everything. And in 69, she was asked to take on the principalship at this school. Right, Brown versus Board happened in 54. Jacksonville did not desegregate. In 64, they were told by judges, you got to integrate, and they took
It's
their
been
time.
10 years,
right?
right?
And then in 69, Judge Toflat was like, here's how you're going to do it, and you've got to do it immediately. And in 70, she was the first principal to like take on that role. And the school was originally founded by a woman who was enslaved,
Rhoda Martin.
And this was a job that she was given because they needed a principal to help with integration.
Yeah. And a strong, independent woman that can come in and do the work that needs to be done.
And when she talks about that story, she doesn't talk about the process of integration. She talks about her love for the students.
Yeah.
She talked about how passionate she was for those kids.
Well, it is a really cool project. It's called Front Porch History. The exhibit has been at the Ritz Theatre since the 4th of September, but there is going to be a talk by the Artists Collective on September 21st at 2 o'clock. Kelsi Hasden, Dana Maule, Vic Alexander, Coach Austin, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
It was our pleasure.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Blessings.
All right, we'll be back in just a minute.
The Jacksonville Children's Chorus is holding auditions for kids in rising 2nd through 12th grades. No audition required for younger kids. Rehearsals in Duval, Clay, and St. Johns counties with tuition scholarships available. Information at jackschildrenschorus.org.
ServPro, independently owned and operated. Whether it's water, mold, or fire damage, they'll help you restore your home or business. ServPro is available 24/7. ServPro, helping to make it like it never even happened.
Hi, I'm Ravenna Koenig, the West Coast Bureau Chief for NPR. It's my job to work with local reporters up and down the West Coast to bring you the most important stories from this region. NPR also has bureau chiefs for the Northeast, the South, the Midwest, and the Mountain West, not to mention 246 member stations across the country.
It's Colorado Matters from CPR News. I'm Ryan Warner.
It's Talk of Iowa from IPR News.
I'm Erica Cruz Guevara, and welcome to the Bay.
These stations are home to nearly 3,000 local journalists who understand the communities they serve.
For NPR News, I'm Enola Segaida in Sierra County.
For News, I'm Michael Collins in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
I'm Natalie Pate in Portland.
This is the unique strength of the NPR network. When news breaks, we already have a reporter on the ground. And that's why every day we can bring you both national headlines and local insight. Help keep the NPR network strong today by giving to this station. And thanks.
Please call 904-353-9528.
Last month, a record 60,000 people were in U.S. detention facilities. That's according to Immigration and Customs Enforcement. More than a third of detainees have been in a facility that's over capacity, with county jails and ICE field offices being used as makeshift holding centers. Conditions for ICE detainees during President Trump's immigration crackdown. That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Hi, I'm Ellen Mathewson, and I live in Stanwood, Washington. When I was in high school in the mid-60s, girls were not encouraged to do science. When I took the standardized tests, I did really well in mechanical reasoning, spatial ability, and my teacher said, "Oh, more like a boy than a girl." Like somehow it wasn't feminine to be good at those things. NPR has just opened up a world of learning about science for me. I love listening to shortwave. It gives me a short peek into what is current on the scientific horizon. Thanks to the NPR network, everyone can be a lifelong learner. Support the station that feeds your curiosity by making a gift today.
Please call 904-353-9528.
Welcome back. Well, you may know from the sound of that music what we're going to be talking about. I am joined by station manager and Electro Lounge creator and host David Luckin. Good morning, David.
Thanks for having me. Good morning, Ann.
So we're hearing from the segment we just heard about lifelong learning and how important it is. And really, this is a place for lifelong learning. I think that, bringing a game of curiosity and wanting knowledge is something that is common among our audience and our listeners on First Coast Connect, and really for the people who support this station overall. These are people that care about their community. They also just care about knowing what's going on. They want to know, they want to learn. They kind of have that thirst for knowledge and just inherent drive to kind of get smarter.
I think you just described our mission statement. To keep people enlightened and engaged and educated and as participants in this community. And we really cherish that role we have of bringing people together, like on your program today, hearing beautiful stories from the past. Where would you hear those?
Yeah, and a really interesting, mix, which the show allows for, which is just a range of people, very diverse voices, but all people who are, as we heard from Dr. Q, just incredibly passionate about the work that he does.
And just his story alone.
It's amazing.
Wow.
It really, he's just an inspiration. But to be able to live in a community where people like that are willing to give of their time to us here to talk about what the work that they're doing. Their generosity is nothing to sneeze at. And of course, the generosity of our supporters is right in line with that.
And our underwriters, I always think getting members and supporters and donations, and I often forget how important the underwriters are for really making this station happened for the last 40 plus years without the underwriters. So if you hear an underwriting business, please support them because they're supporting you and they're supporting the community in a way that only a big business or small business can.
And so we're doing a pledge drive. So we're asking people, and very often the people that care about us and support us are giving us that financial support. We always kind of nudge them to bump it up if they can, if they're able, if they're a sustainer. But we're right now asking people to, if they have not supported, to step up and begin supporting. And that's a little bit of a different challenge to people. Sometimes if they're not accustomed to do it, it is not a muscle memory, as you will. But times are different. And we are asking people in this community to take that step and to become supporters and sustainers of this station.
No, you're absolutely right. And we had a very successful drive a month or so ago after the rescission. So we're not asking those folks again. They really came to our rescue. Now we're, like you said, we're asking the folks who've been listening for years and maybe thought about it, maybe were members or donators before and let it lapse. We want to get you back in the family because now community is more important than ever. We have no state funds, no federal funds. And we're okay with that. We're adjusting and we're strong. We're going to carry on. We're not going to let it stop us at all.
Yeah.
But it requires some new members to join the old members so that we keep this going because we did lose $1.9 million, and that's nothing we're going to raise in a pledge in 2 days.
That's right.
But we want to continue showing films, having lunch and learns, bringing in guests, having a sheriff's debate, all the things we do here that aren't what you and I are doing now. There's so much behind the scenes that people don't know. An ADAPT event last night talking about the canopy over our homes.
Yeah, films, all kinds of things, educational
we
programs.
try really hard to meet all kinds of people. Our films have been foreign films, classic films, music films, documentaries. So we really always think, how broad-minded can we be?
And often bringing in the directors as well.
We will.
And
We'll
being able
bring
to talk
in,
to
a film in a few weeks, Until.
No Sleep Till.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I can't remember that name. And the director was from town. And the fun thing about that film, I watched it, is you keep pointing out the corners where you used to hang out or bike or skateboard. So it's a wonderful film, but being so local, it's really fun just
all shot in
picking
Atlantic
out
Beach in the area around here.
Exactly, the little side streets. And I'm thinking, that's the old Kmart, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful film. But that's just one of the things we do to meet the community where they are. Because the people who come to the film may not listen to all the news we do, and some of the news people may. But so we try and meet everyone as well as we can with a very diverse program of programs, events. Be My Neighbor Day where we bring all the kids in to meet the characters. Right. It all relates to community. It all.
And it may be as simple as you said, some people letting their membership, their support lapse. You may have gotten a new credit card. The one may have timed out. It's past date. And so sometimes it's as simple as that. People who care about this station, who want to support it, but maybe just aren't aware that that support has lapsed. So if you can call, if you can support the station, the number is 353-9528. You can also go to wjct.org/sustain. and become a new donor. We thank you so much for your support. We really do. David, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. And a real quick mention, it's also for PBS. You're supporting PBS and NPR, the whole organization.
Oh, 100%. It's not just us on the radio. It's everybody, the whole station. So thank you for your support, and thanks for listening. If you have comments, suggestions, you can send either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything today, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight or find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacey Bennett. Isabella Casapau is our associate producer. And on the technical side, we're being helped out for the next few weeks by Michelle Coram and Andrew Wickman. We'll be back in tomorrow. You've been listening to First Coast Connect.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.org.